Okay, if you want to introduce yourself, and I'll introduce myself.
All right. Well, first of all, I want to say hello that my name is Rose Mulet. I'm a transgender woman. I've been doing more and more of these debates. I make music as well, but most recently, I've debated Vaush and Destiny. And my views are kind of controversial, specifically because I'm more of a trans medicalist. Like you see most trans people on Twitter. I don't really represent that kind of ideal, but I'm also not as extreme as like Blair White as such. I have videos criticizing her. So, obviously within the trans community, my own opinions are very interesting and controversial. So I think that's an interesting introduction.
Cool. Well, I'm excited to talk about some of those. My name is Kristina
Perfect.
Tsarina. I'm a writer. I typically write on my Substack about trans issues. And yeah, I'm not really on the YouTube or anything like that. So this will be interesting. But yeah, I wanted to talk to you because I recognized you on Vaush, and I watch Vaush pretty frequently. Um, and yeah, I had some comments about some of the things, some of your views, and yeah, I just wanted to kind of talk about some of them.
Yeah, pretty typical. I mean, that debate was a lot for a lot of people. People had some opinions. So I think it's good that I have like this follow up being like, what went on in that debate? Why did you say some of the stuff? I think this is a good opportunity. And also, you get your, first taste of like being online and, maybe you'll start a channel, maybe you won't, maybe you'll just keep doing your blog stuff. But I think this is a cool thing.
Yeah. So I did write down a few things that I kind of wanted to talk about. So this one of the first things I wanted to talk about, it wasn't in your debate with Vaush or Destiny, but you did make a separate video on it. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Kendrick Lamar Auntie Diaries
Yeah.
song. I've
Yes.
seen there was some interesting takes, and I wanted to talk about those, if that's okay.
Oh, that is totally fine. I'm gonna be turning down my AC, but I'll be back. That video, I don't know for whatever reason that video just took off. People were like, so it was a very hot take, and I completely understand that. But I want to just give my opinion because it's like I know a lot of people would be afraid to say that because Kendrick's got a lot of fans, and some people are like, oh well, he's trying to do the right thing. And I just felt that the song was. I mean, there's misgendering, there's dead naming. I didn't think it was a great song, but a lot of trans people I've talked to said that they did like it. So you know what? Maybe I'm in the minority.
Well, I think what it is, I don't really listen to a lot of Kendrick Lamar, so I'm definitely coming at this from a completely unbiased position. I mean, I probably listened to a few of the songs in the past when I was younger. Um, and so when this came out and I kept seeing headlines and articles about it, I had to give it a listen. Um, so I guess one of the first things that, not one of the first things that you mentioned, but one of the things that you mentioned in the video was talking about the misgendering and the dead naming, which I'm completely on the same page as you with. I do think it could have been more impactful if he did go ahead and just use the names of his cousin and his uncle. Um, but you mentioned a lot about, well, if I was his cousin, if I was his uncle, I would have major issues with this. And I think what's interesting about this is that it doesn't look like we have any. Um, we don't know, and we don't know whether or not that they were comfortable with it. We don't know whether they were approving of everything that he was doing with the song. And so they may be totally cool with it. And so I think it's one of those things where if they were comfortable with that, then I don't know how we can be super angry with them and trying to defend their position if they're okay with it. But like I said, we don't know one way or the other. Um, but that was one thing.
Oh, can I just say something real quick?
Yeah, of course.
Uh, my rebuttal to that would be obviously if an article comes out tomorrow saying actually Kendrick Lamar's relatives were perfectly cool with the song, they loved it.
Yeah,
I think that would be like a huge like win for the song. People would be like, okay, I could concede like that probably would be better
yeah,
knowing that, but we don't. And also, I mean, I don't think that completely negates it either because that song is permanent. When you're someone as big as Kendrick, like millions of people are going to be constantly hearing this. Maybe they like the song now, but maybe 5 to 10 years down the line, maybe the uncle doesn't like the fact that everyone calls him Auntie Diaries. I mean, he named the song, the title of the song is misgendering the uncle. Even when
yeah,
people talk about the song and they're trans inclusive, they still misgender the way that is. And then his cousin, being referred, she is a woman, but it's kind of like this like, I'm a cis ally. Look at him. I'm so proud. He is a girl now. It makes, you know what I'm talking about. When people say that, it makes me cringe so hard because it's like, you don't get it. You don't. It's like, oh, you're so close.
Yeah.
But it's just like, ugh. But yeah, no, I totally understand what you're saying there. I think that's a fair point to make.
Yeah, and I completely get that. It's I do think, like you mentioned, there needs to be a little bit more progress, and I think he's on the right track. Like you said, not there yet. And
Yeah.
um, something else I wanted to point out is that in the video, you mentioned that he doesn't talk about his relative's experience with transition, and I disagree. I think there are a lot of lines in the song, particularly about his uncle when his uncle is in church, and how the pastor is calling his uncle an abomination and things like that. I see that. I think there's more in the song about his relative's experience than about his own feelings about it. I don't. That's just my opinion. There's a lot of lines throughout the song where he really, I think, hits home with how his relatives are feeling. And even at the end of the song, something that we were talking about, or something that you mentioned in your video about the F slur, he even gives his cousin, because he's using quotation marks at the end of the song, he gives his cousin props about pointing out the hypocrisy. So he's even saying, well, hey, my cousin is the one who pointed this out to me. And, that's correct. And like, I'm not going to do this anymore, kind of thing. So I don't know. I think you're a bit wrong with that. But did you want to say anything about that?
I think, I mean, that's obviously a fair point to make. Obviously, my argument would be like, yeah, he's pointing out his hypocrisy, but like, if he's still putting it in the song anyway, like, what does that say? It's like, yeah, I've learned this lesson, which is why I'm going to do it right in the song where I've told you that I've learned the lesson. Like, okay, it's kind of weird. I get what you're trying to say. Like, you kind of just want to get away with saying like a slur, like a word that you can say and be like, I'm Kendrick Lamar, I can get away with saying this. Okay, cool. Because you're saying it with love, but it's like, I don't know. I'm not gay. I'm a trans woman. I understand, like, the slur being used for trans women too. Like, yeah, all of that. I think the best defense of the song that I've seen is like a lot of people will say like, oh, well, this isn't a song, with trans people written in mind. This is a song for like, the person who doesn't know much about trans stuff, for them to get it. And it's like, I can see that argument. Like, he's not writing this song for trans people. He's writing this song for his fans and for the people who don't fully get it. And I understand that. I just thought that there's a way to tell this story. And I don't agree with the fact that the dead naming and the misgendering was totally necessary. He could have conveyed the same thing with gender affirming pronouns. I don't buy that narrative. That's just my take, though.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you with when he was misgendering or dead naming Caitlyn Jenner.
Yeah.
As much as I don't like her as a person, I do still respect her identity. But I think a lot of the issues with the F slur is that, I mean, I look at it as because I am a writer and he is using it in the past tense. I do see it as something that he is overcoming and learning from. And then at the very end, he no longer says it. At the very end of the song, he even goes and changes it to F slur rather than saying the full thing again. I'm not a big fan of the word. I honestly maybe even think it could have been better if he had just said fag instead of the full thing. Maybe that would even sound better. Maybe people wouldn't have been so upset. I don't know. But I think my biggest issue with it is that if he does release another album in the future and he goes back on his ways, like in this particular song, it seems like he's not going to say it anymore. And he's learned from that. Very similar to Chappelle's special on Netflix, saying how he wasn't going to punch down and make any more transphobic jokes. And then yet, I think a week later, he went and did the same thing and continues to do the same thing today. So I want to try to give him the benefit of the doubt here. And if he doesn't use those slurs anymore in any of his future songs, anything like that, then I think that's really good.
I guess first of all, I just want to say right off the bat, like, undoubtedly speaking, Kendrick Lamar is much more trans positive than Dave Chappelle. I think that's undoubtedly true. Like, I'm not out here saying that like Kendrick Lamar is on the same. No, Dave Chappelle is like, I'm team turf. Like, no, right. Dave Chappelle, you're just transphobic. Like, that's not cool. But at the same time, this is an artist who is critically acclaimed. This is people love his music, and that's cool because usually he talks a lot about being Black in America and centers a lot of social issues in his music. So when he makes a song like this, he's making this song knowing with the knowledge that this is going to be something that's going to be talked about. So when you have that with that context, you have to be very careful when you write it. And I just don't think that he was. And that's just my own personal opinion. Obviously, a lot of people, I know the dislike video to that isn't public. I'll just let you know there's a lot of dislikes for that video.
Do you think that people will pay more attention to the story than the narrative that he's telling? Or do you think more people who aren't trans, do you think they'll pay more attention to the F slur? I mean, I like the F slur. It obviously bothers me a little bit, but to me, it was looking at all the other lyrics. To me, that was what was the most important. And I think people who aren't trans, I don't think they're going to be as hyper focused on the F slur as they are with the rest of the story he's trying to tell.
No, I agree with you in this sense. And that's another thing I've heard people say. Well, it's actually the net positive of this song on the societal impact is positive. Therefore, what are you doing? Why are you even focusing on this? This is a good song. Why are you even making this in the first place? This is so dumb. Are you that's what people in the comments keep saying to me. It's like, this is a trans positive song, Rose. What are you doing? Why are you so nitty gritty? This is why people, and I've heard this all, but it's I don't think that excuses it from criticism personally. Was I a bit extreme in the video? Maybe. I would take it back maybe. But I still think there's some valid stuff there.
That's fair. Like I said, the misgendering and the deadening definitely, especially if that wasn't something that he spoke with his relatives about, and if it made them uncomfortable listening to it, for sure.
Oh, definitely.
Let's see. Something you went into kind of briefly in that same video was about cis men playing trans roles. And I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about that as well, because I think that's a big, I think that's been a big issue. Maybe not recently, but it definitely was before Pose and some of these other shows came out. Shows such as Transparent, and I think you mentioned The Danish Girl and some of these others.
Yep, that's the one.
Cis men are playing these roles. Can you kind of go into a little bit of your opinion on that?
Yeah, so when it comes to that, I just do not believe there's any scenario where a cisgender man should be playing a transgender woman. And I think there's many reasons for this. The first reason is that somebody who, in the case of The Danish Girl, this actor, this guy is being handed awards and praised for all this stuff. And one, you could have had a trans woman or even a cis woman play the role. And the person who's being seen by the public, that person's going to live as a woman. So when you think of the actor or the actress playing that role, you should see a woman, not, wow, complimenting this man. This man is so brave for, putting on makeup and confronting his toxic masculine. I see that all the time. It's you're missing the point here. Yeah. This is a woman being played, just identifying as a woman. And if you're seeing this man on the red carpet playing this role of a transgender woman, I think there's this disconnect and this problem here that I take serious issue with.
Yeah. What did you think of, because this is I spoke briefly a second ago about the show Transparent. That show, I don't know if you've seen it or not, but it was definitely something that helped me with my transition. And even though, the main character, Amora, is played by Jeffrey Tambor, who unfortunately went on to sexually harass one of the trans females in the show, Trace Lissette. I think for me, that would be one of the examples where I think it would be maybe okay if the narrative follows someone who's later in life, maybe in their 60s, who is just starting to transition. It makes more sense, I think, to find someone either who is cis male or even a cis woman. I think I would prefer a cis woman. Maybe just use makeup to make her look a little more masculine. And then talking about their transition. But I think that was a really good portrayal. I don't typically think that in situations like The Danish Girl or what was the other one? Dallas Buyers Club. I think Jared Leto played a trans woman. It got a lot of praise. I never saw it.
Me neither.
Not a big, in general, I'm not a big fan of it. But I
Yeah.
do think there are some instances where it could potentially work depending on, what the story is. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I mean, okay, so if you ignore the fact that I'm transgender, if I was purely a Hollywood director, had no cultural sensitivity in what was going on, I can understand why someone would look at a cis man to play someone who, like, let's say someone transitioned when they're like 40 years old.
Right.
I could see why they would think that that'd be a good idea. My argument would be, though, is that you could easily, like, in that case, find a transgender woman to actually play the role. And that way you're not like, having this person being seen as a man. Like, I understand why people do it. I just don't like the idea.
Yeah.
I just don't see, like, why does that need to be a thing? Like, why does Hollywood need to cast cisgender men as transgender women?
Yeah.
I don't.
Anything, I definitely think it should be a system, like you mentioned. Now because I was thinking about this a little bit in regard to if it is a narrative where their story is focusing on someone transitioning. I personally think maybe getting a trans actor that could be potentially a little dysphoric for them if they are trying to portray themselves pre-transition. I think of like Orange is the New Black. I think of there was an episode where Laverne Cox's character, they actually, they got her twin brother, which was really fortunate. They had her twin brother show her pre-transition, which was really cool. But I think, do you think that trans women or trans people would potentially feel dysphoric if they had to play their character pre-transition?
That's something I haven't really thought about. I think that that's a valid point to make. Like, maybe in certain situations like that, maybe a trans woman wouldn't be the best idea. Here's the thing. I could think of like some justifications. Like, let's say a movie is about like an adult trans woman, but you need to have like flashback scenes of like when she was 12 or something. Right. And it's like, I can understand like hiring like a 12-year-old boy for like the 5 minutes of film you need to film those like roles. So it's like, right. I get that. But like for the majority of the film, when she's an adult, like obviously, you have a woman or like cis or trans play that. So it's like, I'm not like completely blind to the fact that, okay, maybe there's some instances where it's like, this can make sense. Or in the instance where, you need to have flashback scenes or, you can hire someone who looks male to show the pre-transition, but it's not like the majority of the show. This is like, just a little bit of time. Like that instance makes sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think there are just some justifications. So I'm glad that we can agree on that a little bit.
It's not as radical as you think it is, so that's cool. Yeah.
Next up, maybe this kind of is starting to go into the discussions that you had with Vaush in regard to drag queens.
This is going to be an interesting one. People have some feelings about this one. Yeah,
a bit of a hot take there, and and one reason I really wanted to speak with you is because watching you talk to Vaush about particular things regarding the community and transitioning and stuff, because I had a lot of those same opinions back when I started my transition. I think I heard that you're 22.
Yeah, I'm 22.
And
how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
29.
Oh, so you're pretty older than me, huh? Yeah.
But I started my transition at 22, and very early on, I had a lot of the same opinions about drag queens. I think you mentioned,
you passed really well for transitioning at 22.
Thank you. It's been interesting going on almost 8 years now. It's been quite the journey.
I transitioned in 2014. We probably transitioned around the same time. I was just 14, you were like 22. So that's it. I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you.
No, you're fine. Yeah, that's weird. We did the same. I was inspired by Laverne Cox because I just loved it so much. But I had the same opinions about like thinking that drag was kind of making a mockery out of not so much trans women, but just a mockery out of femininity, I guess. I don't know if that's right. But yeah, if you just want to share some of your thoughts on that again with me, drag queens, and
Yeah.
how they make you feel, or
I've always felt that someone who is putting on a wig and, putting on a performance for a crowd just to like basically make the crowd laugh, or even if it's just lip sync, you're over exaggerating. You're not really being your valid gender expression. You're putting on this over performance. Like they wear makeup and their wigs in a way that like a cis woman would never wear out in public. It's this over performance. And it's like, it's not your valid gender identity. So I don't understand this need for a cisgender man to put on this performance where it's like over exaggerated, feminized features. I just don't see that. And as a transgender woman, a lot of like cis people look at that and they don't understand that like being drag and, being trans is like two completely different things. So I just think it's weird that the cis society sees those as the same, it's part of the same community, when I feel like one is mocking the other. I feel like a lot of people are afraid to talk about this, or there isn't really a discussion. I just have a lot of issues, and I can go more into detail, but that's a good introduction.
what makes you think that people don't separate aren't able to differentiate between drag and trans? I had those same thoughts. I thought the same thing, but I think people can. I think people know that drag is, as you said, a performance. Someone pointed out to me a couple years ago when we were having a discussion that it's artistic, doing the whole getting all completely over exaggerated and stuff like that. To me, it's kind of an art, because it does take a lot, even people who do like makeup and stuff for a living, like that's an art. So I don't know, but why do you think people can't or don't know the difference?
Well, first,
Well,
I'm sorry, no, I thought you were gonna say when you say it's an art, like I mean, people could say, well, actually putting on a blackface, that was an art, that took real effort to do. So I don't think that that's like a really good argument. Specifically, I'm not saying that it's the same as drag, because I know it's different. But I think there's some similarities. I just think that I'm not saying, I think some people can tell a difference, but I think it's similar enough that a lot of cis people will look at drag and like use that to like attack trans women, or they'll say, yeah, it's making a mockery, like, just be like, I've had cis people say to me that they love drag queens, but trans women, are offensive because, oh, you actually think that you're like, these drag women, like they know that they're actually men, but like trans women are like mocking us because, you're like, I mean, I've heard so many, like I've heard cis people say to me, like, oh, well, that drag queen, she's prettier. She looks more like a woman than you. It's like, I've had so many times. Or like a drag queen will say to me, oh, honey, we're all just men in dresses. Like I can think of so many instances where people say things like that. And it's just another and another and another. And it just makes me not like drag in general. So, I mean, experiences like that are kind of helping me feel the way that I do.
sure. I get that. If those are
Yeah.
if those are conversations that people are having with you, then I don't think that's good. I think those people I don't know what's going through their heads, but
Yes.
I definitely don't think it's the same as blackface. Blackface was, I feel like, primarily used to make a mockery of, whereas I don't particularly think drag people are doing it to mock. I think people who are doing drag really do enjoy putting on a show, and I don't know. I think there's a difference between like that, which was very much racist, and this.
Oh, undeniably, yeah.
Now I'm trying to see where I kind of wanted to go with the drag situation. Like I mentioned, I definitely had a lot of the same opinions. Going to drag shows made me super uncomfortable, and
Oh, really? I've never been to drag shows, so that's interesting. I've just been afraid to go because I know it would upset me. So it's like I don't even bother going because it's like not for me,
no,
But it's like people say you should go to. I did a debate with a drag queen recently. He's like, well, you should go to a drag show, and I said, why would I go to something that's going to make me feel uncomfortable? It's like, could it make me feel better about it? Maybe, but am I going to take that risk when I could be personally like, I don't know. Sorry. part of you
No, I
before.
mean, I get that. It's sometimes better to avoid something if you already um, think you might know the outcome of how to make you feel.
Just curious what it was like for you. But yeah, sorry.
I haven't been to many. I haven't been to a whole lot, but the ones I have been to are very welcoming, and they, I don't like give away my trans identity or anything, but I've never seen anything that's made me feel like they wouldn't accept me, or they never said anything that's like super anti-trans. Like I think you mentioned in your video that you've heard them say like the T slur and stuff like that, and I don't know, I've never encountered that, but I mean, I'm sure it happens, for sure.
Right. Oh,
Um,
sorry. I don't mean to. Oh, no.
oh no, you're fine. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I have a video. There's like a clip. I don't watch RuPaul's Drag Race, but I was like searching for like a video I was doing, and there was a clip called "She Male or Female," where it's like on these drag queens would like for a game, they would look at these pictures of like women and be like, is this a drag queen or is this like a real woman? And obviously shemale being a transphobic slur. And it was like the whole clip was them just like mocking these features, like, oh, she's really a woman? Like what? Oh, with that and that. And it's like it was just so like gross and offensive to me. And I was just like, ugh, by like looking at that, it did not age well. And I understand that not all drag is like that.
Right.
And that's probably a bad representation. But I mean, that's like what I think of when I think of it. It's like, that's just not, I don't like that. But anyway, sorry. I don't want to interrupt you. I feel like I've been doing that a lot.
No, you're fine. You're totally fine.
Cool.
I've never personally watched RuPaul's Drag Race, so
Me neither.
I kind of had my about RuPaul back in the
Yeah,
day.
RuPaul is, I do not like them. I do not like him.
I
Sure,
still
that
don't-
goes without saying.
Yeah. Now, I mean, the only thing I know is that like recently, I think within the past couple of years, they've had trans women on there, which is great. But I think, before that it was, yeah.
But drag isn't good for trans women though.
Why?
I've said this before.
What makes you think that? I'm just curious.
Well, first of all, I've said this a few times before, but I just think it's messed up that we live in a society where, it's easier for people to put on a performance of this over exaggerated, like hyper feminine that they don't actually identify. That for whatever reason, society is more accepting of that than actually just being a normal woman. And that these people are, for whatever reason, feeling more comfortable doing that for a few years and then saying that they're a trans woman, when it's like being a woman should be the easier, more easy thing to do. So I think that's a serious problem with our society. And I don't think that being in a culture that just like, views trans women the way that they do, or being in that kind of environment is good for a trans woman. When it's like, I just don't think that that's good. It's like people argue it's exploiting your gender identity. I don't buy that. I don't think that's a good way to do so.
Well, that's why I go back to me, I see it just as an artistic kind of thing. I don't see it as, I don't know. I feel like where I'm at now, like I could go out and do drag and be totally comfortable. Maybe early in my transition, I couldn't do it because it would make me feel a little weird. But I mean, if these trans women are going on there and competing and wanting to do the whole thing, I don't think that's bad for them. They're clearly comfortable enough to be a part of, that community. And even though it's not their community, like they're not, drag queens, they're just putting on a show.
When you do drag, you're being viewed as a man in a dress, and that's like the most transphobic thing to view someone as. So it's like, when I think of trans women in drag, I think of before you come out. But if you've already come out as trans, if you're still doing drag, that's even worse, in my opinion.
Well,
I just don't think.
Isn't there a season that is just all trans women? Is that, I don't know anything about the show, but I thought for sure.
I don't know either. So it's possible. I don't know, but there probably was like
women. Like
there are trans women on the show. It's just I just don't like that.
I think the audience knows they're trans.
Well, yeah, I mean,
sees them as men. I don't know.
I
don't know if it's bad for trans women to do it. I think it's really an individual kind of comfort situation.
I mean, like I said, I can't speak, like, I'm sure there'll be some trans women who are like, well, actually, I do drag and I like it for X, Y, and Z. I just think that's like an inherent, like, dysphoric situation to put yourself in. And I just think as a trans like woman, like that you shouldn't be like, you should, it's maybe it's self-hatred. I don't know what it is. It doesn't feel right to me. And I really just can't get past that.
Okay. That's totally fine.
Okay.
What now, speaking of drag queens, because I know it's all over the Twitter. I kind of want to get your opinion about the Texas kids drag show, because
my
I did see something on Twitter, and I saw that I don't know if this was a serious tweet or not, but I saw that you.
Twitter, I can get all crazy. So yeah, I mean,
I saw that you tweeted based in regards to Marjorie Taylor Greene's tweet about making it illegal to bring kids to drag shows. So I kind of want to talk about like that show a little bit, and what if I don't think I've seen you talk about it anywhere on the Twitter. So I was just curious if you had an opinion about it.
I mean, considering my views on drag, I don't think it should be too surprising that I don't think that children should be like, I mean, first of all, I don't like drag as a concept. I don't even think it's like, I mean, obviously as a trans woman, personally, there's a lot of deep-seated feelings there. But when it comes to like children, it's like, I don't think they should be exposed to it. I think a kink is inherently present with drag. Like some will argue, like, and I had a friend who was a drag queen. I had a video on my channel about this guy called Victory Rider, long story drama that happened. I thought he was a cool guy, and he was a drag queen. I looked at his TikToks, and he was like, I thought TikTok actually collaborated with him. Like, he has like a few million followers on there. But like some of his videos were like, he was responding to these children, making like these weird sexual comments. And I was just like, this is so weird. I don't support this. And it's like, I don't know if that represents like all drag, but like all the experiences that I've had, it's like this, he's even said to me in like voice calls, like, this is something you don't bring their children to. He does it on TikTok. I just don't think that children should be in a space that's like adult by nature.
Going back to, I'll pause on the Dallas, Texas thing for just a second. But going back to speaking about like drag culture, I mean, drag has been around as long as, like trans identity has been around. And you had the drag balls, you had the ballrooms, and you had trans women there as well. And so to kind of put it to the sidelines from, the trans identity, to put it away from that, I don't think it's really good, because they kind of came up together in a sense. And I don't know, I think it helped pave the way for people to be able to express themselves like you and I now.
I know a lot of people have that. Like, I know people say, well, actually, it's Stonewall. There were drag queens there advocating for your rights. And it's like, okay, maybe there's some truth to that, right? I can see that. But at the same time, it's like, I don't necessarily buy that. It's like, I know this is going to be bad. Like, I don't want to like keep going back to this, because I don't want to make the argument about this. Like, yeah, just because something's been around for a long time, like, it's my personal opinion. Like, blackface has been around, but I think if blackface had evolved to a point where it's like people putting the blackface to celebrate Black Lives Matter and being delusional like that, that's the way I see drag. And maybe, is that a little extreme? Probably. I just think it's evolved to a way where it masquerades as this like super woke accepting thing, when I think it's really deep-seated. Like, I just don't like it. I think it's this really weird, like adult rated, like thing that kids should never be invited to, mocks women, mocks trans women in particular. I just do not like it.
Well, with the kids event there, I mean, there wasn't, I know you mentioned like pink earlier, and how a lot of drag is like pink. But there wasn't anything like inherently sexual happening at that particular event. And I think we can agree that in general, obviously kids shouldn't go to drag shows that are like late at night, where, people in their 20s and 30s are going to, or drag brunches and things like that. But that's not what's happening. We're talking specifically about one event that was supposed to be catered towards children. And despite the sign because that sign is really dumb. I mean, granted, I
The
don't.
lick sign. What did it say? I forget what
It's
it
not gonna
was. It
lick
was
itself.
that. Yeah. See that is just gross. Like, why
But
would you
the
put
thing,
that at a children's event?
but the thing is that kids have been exposed to those kind of innuendos since the 90s. I mean, if you're since the 50s up until till the 90s and even today, there are cartoons that have had even worse innuendos that only adults would understand. And I feel like this is a very similar situation where none of those children are going to know what that means. And even though optically it looks really bad, and I think they should have covered up the sign, nothing else sexual was happening. Because if you think dancing is inherently sexual, then that's a problem because it really isn't.
I don't think that dance is inherently sexual. I think some types of dance are, and that was probably the type of dance in a sexual way. The cartoon thing, I will 100% agree with you. There were some cartoons, made by straight people, not any LGBT stuff regarded. There are some weird
Right.
adult jokes and kids shows that are pretty
Oh, yeah.
gross, and I think that why would you do that? It's kind of pretty sick. So I agree with you 100%.
But we do
But I
that
don't.
okay.
I
Not
just think that that's
90%.
really weird. But I think there's something specifically malicious, drag or not drag, to have a sign that has a sexual innuendo for a event that was marketed towards children. I just think that that's just not okay.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm
I can
saying?
agree with the sign. I can agree that the sign should have been covered up, even though like children won't get it. I do think maybe they could have done better there. But I think despite the sign, people would still have an issue with this. And I guess I'm curious because I haven't heard many people pointing out specifically what's wrong in this scenario. People have blamed the dancing, which if you looked at the videos, there's really nothing going on. There's one video and one image of a woman doing this or a drag queen doing the splits. And that's not enough to make it like this is a sexual grooming kind of situation. So what do you see? I'm just curious. What do you see in the videos and the images that are sexual that kids shouldn't be exposed to?
I mean, honestly, if you have any videos, I would love to see them because I've been actually really trying to find videos. I think I found like one of someone. I think it was the one doing the splits.
Right.
I haven't. I'm trying to pull them up right now. That's what I've been trying to do for these past few minutes because I think that would like.
I made a tweet about it. If you want to pull up the tweet, I shared two.
Yeah, go for it. Just
videos.
link it to me in Discord. I'll open it on my computer.
Because I've just been seeing a lot, and
Oh, here
if
it
there
is.
was more happening, then I would understand. But here, I don't know if you found it.
A drag queen drops it low for children and takes their money. This is not even the worst footage to come out of the event. I'm looking at this now.
Oh, okay.
Oh my God, this is pretty despicable. Oh my God, yeah, that is pretty despicable.
Well, what's despicable? What is it that you're saying that's despicable?
I can hold on. I can link this to you. It's this video that I just saw. I think it is the one with doing the splits. She's taking, well, I guess a man in the dress, like as a drag queen, just dancing in this provocative outfit, and then drops down, picks it up, money from a child. Like it feels like I shouldn't even be watching this. Like it just feels wrong to be watching.
Is it that provocative when we think about what we were, or rather what I was, well, I don't know what kind of cartoons and stuff you watched, but is it that provocative when we think about what cartoons and things like that, music that we listened to when we were kids? Do you really think it's that provocative? I've shared this example multiple times, but I think of like, when I see those outfits, I think of like, oh, the Powerpuff Girls or something like that, where you have really odd characters. And you just, no one bats an eye because it's not that bad. And when you think about what kids are exposed to even more outside of that event, I mean, you have people outside who are harassing their parents. You have people outside who are calling their parents groomers. You have an image of one little boy covering his ears because his mom's being harassed. I mean, none of that is okay. But yet people are upset about this person in an outfit doing the splits, and the other people are fairly well clothed, nothing more than a child would see at the beach or another instance.
Okay, I just want to say point blankly, I'm against harassment. I do not think harassing people is the way to go. Like, you can say what you want about Twitter, but don't bring personal attacks into it.
Yeah.
That being said, I agree with you that the cartoon stuff, some of it was weird. In
A
some
lot of
instances,
it
it's
was
normal.
weird.
I'd have to think about the specific, like, but
Right.
I do think that there's a difference between watching, an animated like character on a cartoon and having an actual person show skin in front of children. I think that that is a bit different,
But
I feel
showing
like there's
skin,
something,
but
it's a bit
people
worse
were at the beach
in
so
front of children
yeah. But you take the
in
kids
a
to the beach.
sexual dance way with the sign that says it's not going to lick itself. I just think that there's a lot.
But if you break it down, if you break down each specific thing, or say if you got rid of the sign, then in general it's not that bad because there's nothing sexual about doing the splits. And that's the only dance. That's the only one where there could be some sort of quote sexuality that people have an issue with. But the other dances, like dropping it low, like that's a ballroom dance. That's something that people have done in the ball shows. There's nothing sexual about that. The other dances, I don't think there's really many images of the other dances or the videos. It's just that particular one. And the rest are the kids playing games. Like it just doesn't seem there's nothing bad happening.
Okay, so I am going to try to be as charitable as possible. First of all, I do not agree with you, but I'm gonna pretend like I agree with you for a second, right?
Okay.
Like I don't agree with you that there's nothing bad going on. But even if I did agree, the fact is that you're still promoting something called drag, and you're basically trying to get these kids to be like, wow, I like this drag performance. Mommy, take me to more. And then the ones they take you to are like actual adult ones that are not meant for children. So even if this event was totally fine and had nothing bad to it, which I don't agree with, there's still the argument to be made that you are promoting something that will lead kids to. And it's like, well, what about like, oh, that WAP song by Cardi B, right? That, in my opinion, that should be age restricted. I don't think the adult media shouldn't be allowed to exist. I just don't think that kids should be watching it. This is an event specifically marketed towards kids. So I do think it's different.
So do you think with kids going to this one event that was supposed to be catered toward children for Pride Month, do you think that is
Yeah.
going to lead parents to take their kids to typical drag shows on a Friday night at a bar? I just don't see it leading to that. That sounds very, that's not something that's going to happen. This was one particular event that was during Pride that was pretty harmless, like completely harmless, with kids playing, what was it? Duck Duck Goose or whatever the heck with the chairs. Yeah, that's not going to lead to that. But I think my biggest concern was that agreeing with, like I said, because on Twitter you had agreed with Marjorie Taylor Greene thinking that's illegal. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene is someone who does not care about drag people, trans people. Like she has made it quite clear that she does not care for either you or me and anyone else in
It's
our community.
probably true.
It
I'm
is
gonna be
true.
honest
How
with
much
you.
do you
But
see
in that
instance you
specific
ever
case, I
posted?
agree with her, which is, I mean, she's probably not the best person. She's probably anti-trans, and that sucks. But I
Oh,
think that this makes trans people look bad, and that's why I don't like it. I
I
mean,
don't
one of the
think
main
it
reasons.
does. I don't think it makes trans people look bad. Why do you think it makes trans people look bad?
I mean, because like I said, it just promotes this narrative that like trans or people in the queer LGBT community. I don't believe I am queer, but like some other people, whatever. I just think it makes this whole community look like we're all predators. It makes us look like, oh, we're just trying to groom children, which is the conservative narrative. And it's like, I wouldn't necessarily go that. I mean, I wouldn't go necessarily that far. I just think, I think it's a little dishonest if you don't think the idea is to at least get these kids interested in pride. Like, I do think that is part of the intent of stuff like this. And I think they would say, if you talk to the organizers, they'd probably say it's a good thing to get kids interested in pride, which is why the event exists.
Now, I'm not advocating for like taking kids to Pride and taking kids to like future drag shows or anything like that. That's not, I'm talking about this one particular event, just to put that out there. But I don't think it's, but even with Pride, there are Pride events that I think there's a Pride event where I live here. Um, that is in an area that is, what's the word? That people take their children to all the time. Like, and there's just like a mini pride event. So they have like their big one, and then they have like a tiny one. And there's nothing really going on that's like sexual at the small one. So I think there are pride events that are family friendly. And I don't know what's particularly wrong about taking the kids to that. I mean, I understand you could say like, well, pride is supposed to be about sexuality and things like that, but it's not just sexuality. It's other things. It's trying to be accepting of other people who are different than you. I just don't quite think there's anything wrong with taking kids to an event that, as long as it's catered in a way that is also for children, I don't think it's bad.
I mean, you just mentioned.
Grooming,
Oh, sorry, your audio is just a little messed up. It's fine.
but I definitely don't think it's grooming.
Your audio is a little like muffled.
Is it better?
No, I mean it's fine. I can still hear you. I don't know. Did something happen recently? Or? You know, it's probably fine. My argument to that would be like, if there's some that aren't super sexual, you don't know which one is which a lot of the time, and it's like, how do you just trust to know like, oh yeah, and it's like you can't even deny that some are. So I just think it's a bad to promote the concept altogether. Like I do not see any justification why you should be promoting drag to kids. I can't think of a single reason why.
So you also, well, because kids like flashy stuff. I mean, think about like the cartoons that kids watch. Kids like things that are over exaggerated. They like things that are colorful and like magical and a bunch of really crazy stuff. So I mean, I just don't think it's kind of like, I don't know. I don't know. What do you think about like the drag, like reading hours or whatever they're called? Do you disagree with those?
Drag queen story time.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it. I mean,
we don't like drag
queens.
We probably don't like that.
Obviously, I don't like it. I don't like. I'd have to look in specifically like what books are they reading, you know? Because if I'd have to like look at that specifically. I don't like the concept in general. I just don't. I think it's like, why would you even want to do this?
Yeah.
It's just so absurd as a concept. I just, obviously, knowing me and what I've said this debate, I don't like it. You know, I think that's fair to say. Yeah.
Let's see. Well, what else did I want to
Oh, and some of the drag queen story hour people were accused of like being like child predators and stuff. Like there was like a handful of them. I'm not saying that they all are, because they're not all like that, but a few of them were. And it was like, I think one of them even like defended and said, yeah, that they still let the person before. It was weird. I don't think it's good, but that's just my opinion.
I would definitely have to look that up to see if there was anyone accused of that.
But I got it from a Blair White video, I think. So I mean, I'm not a huge Blair White fan. So you can take that with a grain of salt, because I know that she's not the best narrator. Okay, I even know that. And it's like I don't like her drag life, but her drag stuff I agree with.
There's a few writings I've done on Miss Blair White where she is just lying out her ass. So
she does lie a lot. I will admit she is a big liar in a lot of
instances. If she claims anybody's a predator, I would definitely need to probably triple check that and take that with a grain of salt, anything that she says.
Yeah.
Something else you mentioned, I think you mentioned both in the maybe it was just the Destiny video. You mentioned you bring up the feeling of normal a lot. And I feel like
I do.
You bring up being cis as being normal. And I don't know if that's very healthy, but I would be curious about like your opinion of that. And also you mentioned like people shouldn't be, or you don't understand people being prideful of their trans identity. Like saying like, yes, I'm a trans woman, I'm happy about it, like I'm doing my thing. So I'm just curious, like what makes you have those opinions?
So my idea when it comes to this is like being trans means that I wish I was a cis girl. I would be happy if I was born a cisgender woman. So knowing this, I do not understand the idea of being proud to be trans because it's like I would be happier if I wasn't. The world would be a much better place if all the trans people were born in the gender that they should have been born into, right? I think that that makes the world a better place. So why am I going to fool myself into thinking that like being trans is cool, being trans is great? Being trans sucks. I mean, I don't like it. Even if the world was super accepting, just the fact that I was born in the wrong body would be a really bad experience, and it would be better to just be cis. So it's like, yeah, is there self-hatred? I know a lot of people say it, and people are like, oh, that's not healthy. And it's like, I just think it's honest. And I think that's like for my mental health, I just like that's the way I like to view it. It's like I don't like to lie to myself about that. It's like I would much rather be a cis woman. It's like, I mean, that's just it makes sense to me.
Well, I think there's a difference between, wanting to have experienced a different life. Like I obviously, of course, have had my own feelings of wanting to be quote normal. Like I used to tell myself that a lot too. I think it's I think what it is that unfortunately because we can't change this. We can never be cis. And yes, it is sad, but
Yeah.
also that's you have to work with what you've got. And I think that's why people are out here saying that they're happy with being trans because I know for me, it changed a lot of my opinions. Before transitioning, I grew up in a fairly conservative household, and if I had not finally done what I felt like I needed to do, I would have probably kept with those ideologies the rest of my life. And I don't think that would have been healthy. And so I think it's just being happy and finding comfort that, yes, I will never be cis, but I feel like I'm something better because I've got to experience this life in a way that not many people get to experience. And I've gotten to understand something I probably never would have if I had been cis. And I think it's just trying to find gratefulness, trying to find little pieces of your transition that you're happy about. And I think that's why people are grateful.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned you were in a conservative family because it's like a lot of people look at me and they see the views that I have and they just assume, oh, well, you were just in a conservative family. That is actually not true at all. I'm the most conservative person in my family. Like I come up from a family of liberals. My sister, I don't talk about her much on my channel, but she is like super like SJW as much as you can be. My parents are like, they're like moderate liberals. I think that's fair. Like I used to think that they were like extreme, but now I realize like, oh, they're like the typical Joe Biden voter, I think. So it's like I have a lot of like, views that would be typical conservative views. I'm obviously have liberal views too. I wouldn't call myself either political opinion. So I think that's interesting. I know it's kind of off topic. I just want to mention that. So I would say like I don't understand how it's like when you say it's better. I just like I understand in a sense. It's like it changed the way you saw the world. You can see positives in that aspect. Like, oh, this opened my world to you, and that's cool. But I don't think that that's being trans that self. I just think like I don't understand how being trans itself is better. And it's like I think there's other ways to like I think cis people can learn that too without having to deal with all the stuff that trans people have to deal with for being trans. Like I know I think it's a coping mechanism. And I'm very happy for you that you do see some positive. I think that's cool for you. I don't believe in that.
Yeah. And maybe I misspoke. I don't mean to say that it's better. Like being trans is better than being cis. I just mean that the experience of living as a trans person has, like you said, has opened up a completely different perspective. And obviously there have been a shit ton of negatives. I mean, it's also opened up my perspective to realize that people can be really shitty human beings. And starting to see that, a lot with our, current political climate. But
It's not great. sorry.
it's a little crazy out there. But I mean, I think it's just trying to find the positives. But I think with cis like being the norm, I just I don't know. I don't like when I try to quote pass these days, I'm not trying to pass as a cis person per se. Trying to don't know how to say it. I mean, whether they think I'm a cis woman or a trans woman, like it doesn't matter to me as long as they know I'm a woman, you know? So to me, it's not, I don't know. I feel like I'm not striving to be or to appear as a cis person. Maybe back when I was younger and first started my transition, that was the case, but like now it's just trying to be a person. I don't know.
I just don't understand that mindset. Like, I know, I get what you're saying, that you just want people to see you as a woman, but to me, when people say that, the implication is just cis woman. Like, so for you to essentially say, I don't care if people see me as a cis woman or a trans woman, as long as they see me as a woman, that's weird to me. I don't understand how you could feel that way. Like, yeah, I don't care if people see me. Like, when people see me as a cis woman, I think that's amazing. Like, I've had people in my DMs or people like on, social media be like, wait, you're trans? Like, I didn't know you were trans. Obviously now with all the videos I posted, I think people know. But when I was starting off YouTube, I wasn't like as open about it as I am now. So
Yeah.
people were like, wait, Rose is trans? What? And that always made me feel so good. So I just don't understand that perspective. And I'm very curious about it. Like,
Yeah, no, I think that I definitely understand the feeling of euphoria, like being, people assuming that you're cis. I get that. I guess my perspective is just that regardless of whether I'm cis or I'm trans, I'm a human being, and like first and foremost, and that to me is that's what I want people to see. I don't care like one way or the other how they see me as long as they treat me as another person. That's all
well,
I
you
care.
care that they see you as a woman, right?
What was that?
You care that they see you as a woman, right? So I mean, there's some level of that.
Sure. Yeah, I do obviously want them to know that I'm a woman. I
But
don't know.
then wouldn't you also care? Like, why wouldn't you care that like you pass enough to be seen as like indistinguishable from cis? Like, I mean, like obviously your experience is probably different from mine in this aspect. I'm just curious, like why you don't feel as strongly about this as I do.
I guess because I used to. I mean, I used to feel very strongly about passing, and
That's very well.
thank you. But as I've gotten older, I don't know if I particularly like the passing as like this concept. I don't because I don't know. I don't know how much good it like does for me. Like I don't want to worry and stress about whether or not I look like super feminine or whatever. Like when I first started my transition, I wore makeup all the time. I wore wigs. I did the fucking most to try to be seen as a woman. And I don't know, like I feel like that made me more dysphoric because I didn't like putting on this hyper femininity. Like that wasn't for me. And so now I don't think about passing. I don't think about any of this stuff. I just think like I know who I am. That's all that matters to me. It's just I know who I am. And I don't care what anybody else sees or thinks. It's like, I mean, obviously there's still a little bit of euphoria that I get when people, see me as a woman, but everyone in my life like knows I'm a woman. So now it's just not even a matter of like trying to pass. It's just it went from being an external thing to being a more internal thing, getting older. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense.
A little bit of sense to me. I mean, like I said, even though I'm so young, I think, when people talk to me, I think, I transitioned in 2014. I mean, I've been trans for a long time, even though I'm pretty young, I've been trans for a while. And
Yeah.
most of my memories at this point, I mean, when you're 14 years old, I used to think that that was like super old and I transitioned super late. I've now realized that most people are like, no, you're silly for even thinking that. Like, what you're doing is like, I went to transition when I was 12, and everyone's just like, what are you talking about? Like, you're so lucky. So I hear that all the time. I know when I first came out, I used to never leave the house without makeup. So I'm similar to you. Like today I will. So I mean, I relate, like we're similar in some aspects.
Yeah,
But
I agree on a good bit.
the reason that I didn't do that is because I genuinely thought that I looked and sounded like a man, and that if I didn't do that, I wouldn't pass and it would just not be good for me.
Yeah.
But then eventually, like, years went by, and people had to like be like, no, even without makeup, you still look like a woman. Like, nobody under any circumstance like thinks that. So it's like, I'll even like post videos now where I don't even wear makeup, and it's like, honestly, a lot of that's laziness, and I probably should, but it's, you know, I've gotten more comfortable, specifically because no matter what, I know that people still see me as a woman, and I like being feminine. I understand not everyone's super feminine, but I like it, you know?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Maybe, yeah, maybe that's like, maybe I feel a little bit of that as well. It's like now that everyone knows everyone treats me like a woman, knows a woman, the concept of passing just, I don't even think about it anymore. So maybe that's what it is. So
That's
maybe,
probably healthier. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, because I always constantly think about passing. That's probably not the super healthiest thing, but it keeps me on my toes. So I don't know.
yeah, I get that.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I was trying to think because I haven't, I feel like that was really all I had that I wanted to discuss from watching. I didn't watch like all of the Destiny debate because it was like super long. Even the Vaush
You're fine.
hours.
Yeah, that's like what, 3.5 hours of content between the two debates.
It's so much. This is why I can never be a YouTube person.
Okay.
But yeah, was there anything you wanted to bring up? Or I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more we could go into that I don't know your opinions on, but maybe we could save that for
If there's anything you want, like, I'm an open book. If you can feel free to ask me any question you want about pretty much anything. Like, I can think, like, I don't, I've only ever spoken to you. Like, I don't know much about you. If there's anything you want to say about yourself, or like anything you want to like mention to like the people watching this, feel free to. I mean, you have the floor. But I think I'm pretty happy with everything that we've covered in this conversation. You seem like a really nice person, I'm glad we had this talk.
Yes. I don't want it to be like a debate day. I just wanted it to be like
no, and that's cool that it wasn't. I didn't feel like I was debating you. And it's like, debates have their merit, like they're fun to watch sometimes, but it's nice when you just have like a nice conversation with someone and it's like, yeah, we disagree on stuff, but we're like, we're cool, like we can respect each other. That's what's
good. It was good. Yeah,
we're on the same team. We want the best for trans people. I think we can agree on that,
I would say so.
Yeah.
I don't have much else to say. If I'll go ahead and send you this video. You can post it on your YouTube, and anyone who's watching, if they want to check me out, I am on the Instagram and Substack and all that jazz. Kristina Tsarina is my name on Twitter handle and Instagram, and yeah, my Substack info's there. But yeah, I enjoyed this conversation. It was good.
Yeah, I'm just too. Obviously, go check out her socials. I'll have them linked in my description. You'll just have to send them to me privately. And obviously, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, do it. If you're watching this far, I mean, obviously, what are you doing if you haven't subscribed?